Hey, this is Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses, and you're watching GNR Central. Yeah!
Hey everybody, what's going on, and welcome to GNR Central. And November is kind of a funny time to be a GNR fan because there's so many anniversaries of different releases from the band. There's Chinese Democracy, there's the Spaghetti Incident, there's Live Era, there's GNR Lies. They have something about Guns N' Roses. They just love to release albums in the month of November, with the exception, of course, of Appetite for Destruction. And it's hard to believe that it's been 10 years since the album came out. Now, I didn't really get into Guns N' Roses as like a hardcore fan until late 2007. So I remember what it was like before Chinese Democracy came out, at least for that 1 year or so. And I remember reading about it and, all these rumors that the album's never going to come out. It's the most expensive album never made. And then towards the middle to late part of 2008, it kind of seemed like a reality, like, okay, this album's finally going to come out. Now, like a lot of people, including probably many of you who are watching this, I heard a lot of the leaks that came out before the album was released, like IRS, there was Street of Dreams, there was Chinese Democracy, I think Madagascar, there was live versions floating around, and of course the band would play those on stage as well. And it really started to sink in that this album was finally going to come out, I think, when Axl hooked up with Irving Azoff, the management company who runs Ticketmaster. He's represented a number of big-named artists, and they basically made it their mission to get Chinese Democracy out. It seems like the album was done in 2007, and it just needed to be released and distributed. And then, of course, we had the announcement that Best Buy was going to be the only big retail chain carrying Chinese Democracy, so you could either buy it online or go in person to Best Buy. And it's funny, even then, there was still a part of me that was doubting whether the album would actually come out or not. And it wasn't until E3 2008 that we had the announcement. If you guys are gamers at all, E3 is like a big trade show that a lot of the video game publishers and developers attend to announce their upcoming products. And Harmonix, who was the developer behind Rock Band, announced that Guns N' Roses was going to premiere a song on Rock Band 2 from Chinese Democracy, and it was going to be the song Chakras Revenge. And that's when I finally set it in my head, like, okay, this is actually going to happen, and this is a real thing. And I want to talk a bit about the album and, my thoughts on it. And I want you guys to share your thoughts on Chinese Democracy as well. And I have to, to be honest, I don't think of Chinese Democracy as a Guns N' Roses record. In my head, it's more of an Axl Rose solo project, but I don't really discount the album because of that. I think there's some really great songs, and I feel like Chinese Democracy was, so hyped. People waited so long. And what people seem to forget is it wasn't the same group of guys that wrote Appetite or Use Your Illusion, but it still got some pretty great stuff on it. And I want to talk about some of my favorite tracks. I feel like a lot of people they basically just discard the entire album and say, oh, it's a terrible album, it was horrible. And I feel like a lot of these people who say that maybe have only listened to it a handful of times. And I have to be honest, there's some songs that I'm not a fan of, but I think there's some great stuff. I think the title track, Chinese Democracy, which was premiered to radio stations as like the first single, was actually a pretty good song. It's a pretty hard rocking song, and I remember the reception to it being pretty positive back in 2008. I remember hearing Chakras Revenge for the first time in Rock Band 2 and thinking, it's definitely more poppy. It's very industrial, very pro-tooled. It really wasn't my cup of tea, but the song Better, which is the third track off the album, I think is one of the stronger tracks off the actual record. And what's funny about Better is that it actually leaked back in 2006. So there was I think it was Chevrolet was doing like a promo, or maybe I'm in Dodge. They were doing a promotion, and somehow Better got leaked on one of their promotion videos, and then they had to remove it. So there was a leak of the song going around. Plus, the band was playing it back in 2006. And I think Better is one of the better songs, no pun intended, that Guns are playing on the Not in This Lifetime tour. And it's one of the songs I'd like to see them keep in the set list. And it's finally great to be able to hear Slash's take on the song. I think Street of Dreams, which was originally called The Blues back in the early 2000s, is also another great song. It's one of the many ballads that's on the record. And I remember the first time I heard Street of Dreams, which was then called The Blues, was from Rock in Rio 3. And I remember Axl getting pissed off because I think his microphone or his in-ear monitor wasn't working properly. I think the next several songs, like I think If the World is definitely not a favorite of mine. It was premiered in the Leonardo DiCaprio movie that came out back in 2008, where he played like a counterterrorism agent. I think it was called Body of Lies. I thought the movie was okay, and I thought it was an interesting place to premiere the song, but it's just not my cup of tea, the song. Probably my favorite song off of the record is There Was a Time, or Twat as it's known as. I think that's one of the best songs off the record. It's one of my favorite Guns N' Roses guitar solos of all time as well. It's a shame that Guns haven't played it a whole lot on the Not in This Lifetime tour. They've played it a handful of times, but I don't think Axl could perform the song live like he used to be able to do back in the 2006 days. Catcher in the Rye and Scraped and Riyadh and the Bedouins are not really one of my favorite songs. I could kind of take them or leave them. I do think Sorry, which is a song that we sort of heard first about from Sebastian Bach, and his vocals are buried very deep in there. Sebastian Bach, his background vocals, is one of the better songs off the record. If you listen to the lyrics, it's almost like he's talking about Slash, and it sort of tells a story of everything that happened, at least you would think when you first hear it, about Guns N' Roses' breakup back in the mid-90s. But Axl came out and said, this is not about who you think it is. And it could easily be about the media as well. It could be about maybe one of his former girlfriends. Now, the next song, IRS, is a song that I am kind of lukewarm about. I don't really think it's that great of a song. It got leaked by Mike Piazza of the New York Mets back in 2003, and it got played by Eddie Trunk on his radio show. And then, of course, he got a cease and desist letter, I believe, and had to stop playing it. Now, the next song is probably my second favorite song off of Chinese Democracy, and that's Madagascar. And I was so excited when I saw Guns N' Roses for the second time on the Not in This Lifetime tour in LA, and they performed the song live. And it's a shame they haven't really been performing it on this recent leg of the Not in This Lifetime tour, but it's one of my favorite songs off the record. I do think the bridge section with all the speeches is a little bit overdone, but I think overall it's a great song. And I remember one of the things reading about the song is that Chris Pittman is actually a co-writer on the song, which is kind of funny. And he was responsible for getting the French horns just to sound right on the record. And Madagascar is one of those songs that's probably the second oldest song of Chinese Democracy. The oldest, of course, is This I Love, which dates back to 1993 at least. Madagascar was a song that dates back to at least 1998. So we had interviewed a producer named Youth who had worked with Guns N' Roses for a short period of time, and he talked. I think he's credited actually in the liner notes for coming up with the string arrangements or the guitar parts to Madagascar. So at least they had written it on guitar as far back as 1998. The next two songs I really am not a fan of. Prostitute, Guns N' Roses have played live several times on the Not in This Lifetime tour. I saw them play it in LA. And then This I Love has been a song I've been basically playing at every show except for some of the more recent shows. And I feel like This I Love is sort of like Axl's attempt to sort of, create another masterpiece like November Rain and Estranged, but I just feel like it falls flat. And for those of you who may not know, the song was originally supposed to be included in the Robin Williams movie For What Dreams May Come back in 1998, but for whatever reason, things never worked out. So that's my thoughts on Chinese Democracy. I think it's a pretty solid album. I don't think it's the worst album ever made. I think it's unfair to characterize the album like that. But I definitely urge you guys to go listen to the record again if you haven't listened to it in a while. There's definitely some great stuff in there, but you just have to look a little bit harder for it. So that's my thoughts on Chinese Democracy after 10 years. It's hard to believe that it's been that long, and it's kind of a shame that the band doesn't really do anything to celebrate the anniversary. I mean, it was such an important part of Guns N' Roses' history and Axl Rose's history, and it doesn't get a mention, it doesn't get a re-release. These unrecorded tracks that may never, or these tracks that never were included on the record but were recorded during those sessions, we may never get to hear, which I think is also a shame. And who knows, maybe someday we'll see some release from Guns N' Roses for like the Chinese Democracy leftovers, but I don't see it happening in the foreseeable future. I mean, it took them a long time to, celebrate Appetite for Destruction's 30th anniversary, and that was a monumental album. I wouldn't use the same words to describe Chinese Democracy, but I think it was a very important album in the band's history. So thanks for listening, guys. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. I apologize for my voice a bit. I've been sick for the last 4 weeks, so my nose and my throat are kind of bothering me, but thanks for watching, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Chinese Democracy below, and make sure you subscribe for the latest GNR news, and go check out GNRcentral.com. Take care.